The Negotiation Club audience out there, okay? So welcome to this pop-up interview. Basically, this is a special one. We're going to be looking and talking to the participants and the organisers of BRUNCO, which is the British Universities Negotiation Competition. So with that said, I'm going to actually bring our team of panelists on. So first of all, we have Nico. So, Nico, just very quickly, who are you and where are you studying, so to speak?
Hey, Phil. I'm studying law at Durham University, and I've headed the negotiation society here and also co-founded BRUNCO together with Amelia.
Brilliant. And actually, therefore, let me bring in Amelia. So, Amelia, now you're not at Durham, are you?
No, I'm in University College London. I'm a final year student, so I'll be graduating soon. And I'm the training officer on the UCL Vocations Committee. So we oversee negotiations as well as client interviewing and commercial awareness competitions.
Right. And again,
BRUNCO after that, of course.
Of course, yeah, don't forget the BRUNCO, all right? You know. And am I right? You're a law student as well, yeah?
Yeah.
Excellent. Okay, then. And okay, we've had this competition. We had it a couple of weeks ago. It finished a couple of weeks ago, and we actually have a couple of winners on here as well. So let me bring on our winners. And so we have Zara and Fatima. So Zara, Fatima, where are you studying and what are you doing?
So we're both at University College London, and we're both law students. So in our LLB.
Right. Okay, then. First, second, third years.
So we're both second years. Waiting for beautiful exam season of second year right now.
Well, best of luck with that as well. And just to add to our final list here, we have, some people might know him, Mike Inman. Now, Mike, actually, you participated as a judge, didn't you? But
yes.
You've got a bit of background in negotiations, haven't you?
I do. I spent 15 years as a practitioner in the seat at the table, both the sales side and the purchasing side. And for the past 14 years, I've taught globally. I've got to teach on 6 continents in more than 30 countries. I love to travel and I love to learn. I don't like to stereotype people, but I love to learn about different cultures and norms and things like that to incorporate into negotiating and relationship building. So I get to go to fun every day.
Excellent. So yeah, I mean, there's always an interesting part between being a practitioner and then actually teaching it. So you know, it's keeping that mix going as well, isn't it?
They're two very different roles. There are people who are fantastic teachers who've never actually negotiated anything in their lives, but they know how to communicate well. And then there are people who are great negotiators, but they can't transfer that knowledge. It's two different paths that you have to be proficient at.
Yeah, definitely different skills. And actually, as young future leaders, lawyers, entrepreneurs, I think it's one of those skills that, you know, we should be ingraining within our next generation far more effective than we are at the moment, which brings us to this competition, because I love these competitions. But BRUNCO is a new competition, isn't it? So I'm just going to have a conversation here. Nico, BRUNCO is, am I right in thinking this is your brainchild?
It sort of is, yes. It didn't exist, at least not within this scope, the amount of universities that we brought in, the level and ambition that it had. But picking up on something that Mike said about learning about different cultures or different ways that people negotiate, definitely one of the things that we wanted to do with this competition was to expose people to different negotiators. One of the things that we say or try to instill in our members at the Durham Negotiation Society is that there are as many negotiation styles as there are negotiators. So with a competition of this level, what you're going to do is be more and more exposed to different people and different styles of negotiation. So hopefully that's what we've done. And I'd love to hear what Zara and Fatima had to say about that as well.
Right, so Zara and Fatima, you know what, guys? I need to double check it because I don't even know whether we've gone live.
I see live on the left corner.
The live thing.
Yeah, but I can't see on.
I see Patrick has. Patrick, can you on the outside? Can you tell us if we're doing okay? He'd sent us initial message.
Oh, hey. There we go. Hi all, I'm excited to dig into this. Hope you all too. Hey, okay.
No, that message came in before we started.
Oh, right. Okay. In that case, I have no idea whether it's live. Is Patrick watching then?
How about this? JN always starts off the master negotiators with, tell us where you're from. Someone jump in and say, hey, we're from wherever you're from, or yes, we're live streaming, or no, we're not coming through.
Oh dear. Okay. All right. Well, I'm going to assume there might be some people there or not, but I tell you what, let's just crack on with it anyway. So, so Zara, Fatima, I tell you what, tell us about your sort of journey in coming into the BRUNCO and actually how the negotiations have supported you going forward as well.
So we actually, obviously, during our second year of uni, it was actually the first time we ever did a negotiation competition in the first place. We started with our UCL College London negotiation competition, so it was part of our law society. And as I said, we'd never even negotiated before. We had actually done debating competitions before, so we did have sort of approximation to each other's kind of style, but in terms of negotiation, we hadn't negotiated before. So this was really our second actually experience of negotiating, but first proper, I would say, because we didn't get too far in the first one in terms of UCL law societies, but the second one we felt a bit more prepared for it.
Yeah, I guess we used the UCL negotiation competition as sort of getting used to each other, getting used to each other's strengths, and really seeing how we can play into this, and seeing really how to take our skills forward in a negotiation setting. So while we had that backdrop within the UCL negotiation competition, as we shifted to BRUNCO, we were able to truly understand what the other teammate is good at and function as a coherent team, which we thought was the most important thing within this negotiation.
So you went from not doing very well to winning?
No, so essentially, yes, because the first time we ever did negotiations was the UCL negotiation competitions. So we were still getting used to each other, and getting used to what is expected of we really didn't have that synergy that we did have in BRUNCO because we were still practicing. It was still a new thing comparatively. So in BRUNCO, we were really able to sort of pull on each other's strengths and get forward.
Okay. Can I comment on something that I see regularly around the world? Not to be too hard on people my age or older, but when I do a workshop, there's going to be somebody like me or a little bit older, and they're going to show up because their boss told them to, and they're going to have their arms crossed. They're going to sit back and they're say, I don't know what this person's going to teach me about negotiating. I've been doing this all my career. And in my brain, little voice says, you're going to be my best friend after lunch, but this morning's going to be tough. So we go through our workshop, and then we actually do a mock negotiation, and I pair them with someone who is younger in their career, just out of university. And invariably, the young person does really well, and the person that's got some experience doesn't do so well. And over the years, I've drilled into this as to why they think they did so well, the younger people. And they tell me consistently the same thing. We just did what you told us to do. So what I heard you say was you had a failure and you stuck with it and you learned about negotiating and you applied it and you did well. People my age and older tend to have a hard time unlearning some of the things they need to unlearn in life because they've got too much experience. It can be a hindrance to your success. So I applaud you for jumping in and doing it and then doing it well. I think the next generation, generations always fight with amongst each other. I think there's a lot of positives among the generation that's coming out right now, and I think you're the poster children for that.
I would probably just add to that. I think that, and I actually going to go back to Zara Fatima. You're studying law. In fact, you're all studying law at the moment. So does negotiation have any presence in the curriculums at all?
So essentially, within UCL at least, we have the law faculty that we're students under, and then we have a law society that we become members of. So the law society runs competitions such as mooting, negotiations, and that's how you get in touch and get into the swing of negotiations. So it's not part of the faculty's curriculum, but it is part of what the society offers, and the society does work pretty closely with faculty. But something that I've seen is that negotiations is usually taken up by people who want to go to the commercial side of law. So I think you have like two sections: number one, mooting for the barristers, and number two, negotiations for whoever wants to be a solicitor down the line. So that's just the way I've seen it in university. I think Fatima will agree with me here.
Amelia, you're in your final year. You're just coming to the end of your studies. But again, just a question to you: is negotiation something that you find is actually taught as part of the curriculum, or are you having to find it elsewhere?
I wouldn't say it's something that's taught, kind of as the status quo. I know I've been doing a family law module this year, and as part of that, we probably debate a bit more, kind of negotiate our own different opinions a bit more. But I wouldn't say it's something that is very taught. But I do know that other universities that I was looking at when I was choosing, which one to go to, I do know that in other universities, it is something that's actually part of the curriculum and is assessed. So it would be interesting to see if going forward other universities kind of see the benefits of doing the law in practice, because I know I find personally that through negotiations, it's helped me build on my own commercial awareness, on my own legal knowledge, rather than, just learning it in theory. I think that practical element is really important to learning.
Well, I'm always about practice. What about you, Nico? I mean, in fact, I'm going to ask you, because you founded BRUNCO. This is the first year. So let's go back a little bit. What's your experience? What's your background with negotiations, maybe at the university? And then what actually, encouraged you to start the BRUNCO?
Yeah, no, absolutely. I think, like Amelia was saying, it's not the status quo to get taught negotiation from the curriculum. What we do get taught, though, are transferable skills. So we learn the art of the word. We learn through the Socratic method how to debate, how to persuade. But I think what's a kind of skill market is for the society to come in and say, it's really focused on a specific aspect of negotiation within a commercial setting or within a interpersonal relationship. And that's sort of what we try to do as students within our societies, is to fill those gaps for those who are interested. And for those who might not even think they're interested, but we kind of sell them the idea that no matter what you're going to do with your life or your career, there are moments in your life where negotiation is going to be really important. So I think what we saw, going back to BRUNCO, is a gap in that market. We saw universities doing intervarsity competitions. We saw internal competitions. And I just thought the natural step, just like any sport, you see regional competitions, and then you see national competitions. So we wanted to take it that further step, again, with that sort of understanding that what we're trying to provide here is more learning opportunities. And that's always the focus for BRUNCO. And as it moves forward to next year, I hope that remains the focus. It's about learning. It's not about asserting that you know more than another person. It's rather a learning opportunity in a communal setting.
And when
can I comment on the legal aspect of it and persuasive arguments and things like that? And there are differences in the different types of negotiations. But so Phil, you started the session before we went live with when you were in university. Well, back when I was in university, about the same 30 years ago or so, a guy that I knew had graduated and he was a lawyer. And he ended up dropping out of being a lawyer. And I said, why? You went to school for it? It's what you seem to be good at doing. You're really persuasive. And he said, Mike, it's really frustrating because one side will take the position that we need $1 million. And the other side will take the position that, well, we need $2 million. And invariably, over 3 months or 6 months, they end at $1.5 million. And the client ends up paying for all that time. And I don't feel good about myself just splitting the difference and getting to the middle. And racking up all these charges, all these hourly rates to do that. I wish we could just get to it and get to the 1.5, but that's not what my firm promotes or allows me to do. But if you're just meeting in the middle, that's a math problem. That's not really negotiating the situation. So here you have a situation. Do you see that in legal now that lawyers want to be, I'll throw the word ethical out there, that we should be fair? That's a word that's out there. Do you feel that lawyers are being taught that if one side wants 1 million and the other side wants 2 million, that it should settle at 1.5?
Is that an open question?
I'm trying to learn about different types of negotiating, and
I think it's yeah. I mean, there are different forms of negotiation, and everybody has a different approach and a different style to negotiation. Some people think something's fair when other people won't think it's fair. I think in terms of what happens within a law firm, I mean, most of my experience with lawyers, I mean, and these are practicing lawyers, is that generally they're very, very good. Right? They're very, very good in the sense of compare that to what I see in other functions within a business. And I think partly that's because, we've got law students here who are participating in a competition. And I know that BRUNCO is, this is the first one, but there are others out there, and there are local ones as well. And they're debating, and they're doing all these other things that are developing these analytical, these communication, problem solving, communication skills. But if you look at other functions and where the careers are formed from, I mean, none of the business studies courses, none of the MBAs, none of them cover negotiation at all. So what I would say is, irrespective of the fact of whether you come out at 1.5 or 2 million or 1 million, I would suggest that the lawyers are in a much better position to negotiate just because they've got more skills, because they've started early and it's part and parcel of what they do in their career. Procurement people don't start negotiations in a sense of negotiation training unless, one, they get given a course, or two, somebody highlights it to it. I mean, nobody does it.
I just had one of those that they were just given the budget, and like, this is our pile of money, and they were just so happy. And I said, is there any more? And they said, no, we don't want to go back and get more. We don't want to have that discussion because we're so happy about finally getting this pile of money to spend.
But I'm gonna bring it back, because there's obviously, in fact, Nico, you talked about a community. So how many universities did you actually get on this first one? How many students were involved? And in fact, what were the levels that they went through? What were the 4 levels of the types of negotiations that they did?
Yeah, sure. So we got together 10 universities. 4 of those were part of the organizing committee. And part of the idea is that also becomes a rotating chair. So there's never a monopoly over who organizes it. So this is just a kickstarting committee. And then the rest of the universities were invited. We actually cast the net pretty wide. So we tried to invite as many as possible, and all throughout the UK. So we did not limit ourselves to the Russell Group, or we did not limit ourselves to England. We really tried to invite everybody. Of course, our reputation is not yet too well known or whatever. So we didn't get that many people agreeing to participate. But hopefully with this year, now that we've started and we've sort of shown kind of the quality of what we can provide, more and more universities will join us. And then in terms of how many participants, this year it was 148, which we were really happy about. And yeah, I thought that was kind of brilliant.
That's crazy. 148 in the first year.
Yeah.
And so because there's obviously, there's quite a number of universities out there, but this is literally by your first go at going out and asking other universities, because there's a lot of negotiation societies out there, isn't there?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
First one I ever got involved with was York. So York Law Society, York Negotiation, and that was back a number of years ago. Fantastic university, fantastic negotiations. They had a bit of a competition as well with Leeds, and I think Leicester as well. So there's lots of these little mini negotiations, but there's nothing that's organised on a sort of a British, so to speak, platform, which is a shame, because I think there were other, within the continent and in America, I think this is far more prevalent. Amelia, you're on the committee, so I just want to go on, Mike.
The ones I haven't heard of a lot of United States-based negotiation competitions. The ones I've been involved with have all been international-based.
Yeah. I mean, there's a great one that's run by Remy with the other TNC. So not the negotiation, but the negotiation.
People from the US are some of the worst negotiators in the world.
Well, I'd be careful putting that in a basket.
Well, no, have you seen Washington D.C.? I mean, in the States we have more intense media, and there's always a winner and a loser, and that's played up, and no one wants to be the loser, and everybody wants to be a winner. There's some cultural differences that get into the brain.
Could I say something briefly about that? So BRUNCO was run through a point-based system, which actually was to undermine that mentality. So it's not about you beat somebody else in the negotiation, but rather if you both excel, if you both actually partner up in this negotiation as opposing counsel, but you're still kind of trying to come to an agreement that's favorable for both of you, you'll both go to round 2. You both can make it to the finals.
Sure.
So it's kind of like trying to undercut that mentality.
Yeah, I think just on that, I think that's what happened with Zara and Fatima. So I know you both did really well in the semi-finals, but so did the team you went against. I think it was Essex, wasn't it? And they got to the final too. So I think that mentality that we brought in really did work and paid off in the end.
Okay.
Yeah, there's what you do, and then there's the results that you produce. You know, in the States, it tends to be more about results based. Right, because that's 120 characters or less on Twitter. It's got to fit really compartmentalized. We can't have a lot of depth to our discussions here, and that's just again, I don't like the stereotype, but it's some cultural norms we have to be aware of that are out there.
Yeah, I think there's a whole conversation point we can have about that, because I suspect some of the greatest negotiators are the one that's go unnoticed. That's for sure. I just want to call it out there to the audience. If you've got any questions as well, or anything that would be of interest, just fire them into the messages there, and I'll see if they pop up.
Looks like Vladimir has one.
Vladimir has one. Yeah, it's this is going back to your comment earlier. I think your story. So great story. What are the other ways to create curiosity and remove skepticism besides a mock negotiation? What are the ways to create curiosity and remove skepticism besides a mock negotiation?
So I'm gonna pin it on that besides mock negotiations, because I think you can learn a lot in mock negotiations. People enter my classes regularly, and I'll ask them how they feel about negotiating, and I'll get somebody who'll say, I'm pretty comfortable negotiating, and that's not always, they may be comfortable, but they're not always great. And then I'll get people who say, I'm not a very good negotiator. I had a gentleman from Yemen in a class I was teaching in Milan, so primarily Italians, and he had come in from this company. And he said, I'm not a very good negotiator. And I said, oh, that's interesting. Let's find out. So we do the role plays, and he wound up doing the best in every single role play. And I said, hey, you didn't think you were a good negotiator in all these mock negotiations. You did really well. Like, what gives? And he said, oh, you have to understand, in my country, I'm not a very good negotiator, but against the Italians, I can hold my own. So there's another cult. He was negotiating all the time against people who were in markets in the Middle East, negotiating all the time. And he didn't feel like he got good deals. And sometimes you don't know if you get a good deal. The one major difference between a mock negotiation and a real world is, in a mock negotiation, you actually get to see the other side's sheet of paper. In the real world, you rarely get to see the other side's real sheet of paper. So you don't really know how you did.
Well, put it this way. If you're in business, you know, you are recruiting individuals who you are hoping are good at negotiation, but you'll never see their real results other than what you've already created yourself. I mean, I'm going to ask here. I'm going to ask Fatima, and that, you know, when you were doing mock negotiations as part of this competitions, but how were you able to effectively, you know, I guess, get involved in that competition, get involved in those negotiations, and keep that curiosity and keep that skepticism to the side?
I would say, in terms of the actual negotiation competition, it was just about the actually getting involved, and firstly, like, asking the questions within the negotiation. I suppose in our competitions and what we were learning to do, firstly in our prior competition and BRUNCO, it was just about probing. You just have to keep asking questions, and essentially, yeah, like, sometimes it's honestly a skill in itself to ask questions. You kind of want to just stick to what you know and then keep putting that forward to the other side, but you actually just really need to figure out what the other side wants in the first place before you can even come up with a counteroffer. We often had counteroffers ready, but without knowing what the other side even wants in the place, it's kind of I would say it would just be circular in that sense.
So in these competitions, in these literally mock negotiations, what would you say is your greatest learning points that's going to help you in your future real negotiations?
I would say, perhaps just for me, just taking a step back, looking at the negotiation from it's essentially that, a step back from an outside perspective, and kind of look at everything holistically, and then come with like responses in that way, instead of something that I personally I think I could improve on in that sense is not constantly trying to jump on the next, the next proposal or the next counter offer. Take a step back and see what the other team really wants, and then find something that will benefit both sides, as opposed to, as you were saying earlier on, about how often you want to get the best result. But as we learned in BRUNCO and in our prior negotiation competition, it's honestly about being a good negotiator. And how do you do that? Just actually getting the skills to be a good negotiator. It's more about just getting the best result, in my opinion. And I think that's what I personally improve on.
No, and I agree to that as well. But I also think something that I did in BRUNCO that I wouldn't usually do in my previous competition was that before quickly skimming through everything and jumping on solutions I could come up with, just really spending 40 minutes, which I know is a lot, but 40 minutes analyzing everything that was given to us, in the sense just really trying to picture, number one, what the other side would want, number two, the underlying reasons, and yes, using probing during the negotiation to understand that, but also going in with a picture so that I can see. It really just helps personally me come up with alternative solutions that really cater to that specific negotiation round, as opposed to general alternative solutions that can be applied to different rounds, I guess, and different scenarios. So just really taking a step back and going through all of the information, dissecting it, and sort of then bringing in your solutions after spending a lot of time on that, for me personally, was something that I learned to do and something that I thought was rewarding.
Now, we've got some audience. I mean, Vladimir definitely agrees with you on that, and I will certainly agree with you on that. But I want to check. Amelia, you got an option. Did you have the opportunity to watch some of these negotiations?
Yeah, I did judge the first 2 rounds, so I did get a good opportunity to watch, yeah.
And is this the first time you've been judging, or is this something you've done before?
No, well, for BRUNCO, obviously, but no, I've judged the competition in my university, and I've judged 2 intervarsities as well. So, yeah, I've seen quite a lot of negotiators in my time now.
And do you feel that actually, as a judge, you're actually learning as well as the individuals who are doing negotiations?
Yeah, definitely. I think the thing that I learned the most is, naturally, I'm someone who likes to kind of drive the negotiation. So, I really like to set the tone, come in with my proposals first. But I had one experience where it made me realize that that's not always the best approach. And sometimes you need to take the time to really build rapport with the other side before you come, all guns blazing with proposals. So something I've learned from watching other negotiators is how important active listening is. So just really, stopping, acknowledging the other side's position, showing you understand. And then I think it's easier then to reach the middle ground, like you were talking about earlier, Mike, where you've really gained the understanding of both sides. And then you can really tailor your proposals to what's been said. Because, I've really hammered into Zara and Fatima as well about the importance of understanding the brief before you go into the negotiation. But I think there comes a time where, any proposal you've made might not be the reality. You can come into the room and face something completely unexpected. So yeah, I think just watching the negotiations, that active listening is really important.
And Nico, obviously, sorry, Nico, you I presume you were watching some of these as well. I mean, is there any major takeaways that you've kind of come to on that?
Yeah, I think the competitors who understood that as much, because Amelia raised a really good point, which is building rapport can be very important. But I think trust building can be done also with just objective facts. So I think what I saw was the competitors who were most able to clearly and succinctly put their points kind of forward was through knowing their brief inside out. I know, Phil, you said that you don't always look for that in competitors, but at least I do think that it gives you an extra advantage if you're able to pinpoint specifically, this is why we want to get this in very objective and clear form. I think that's also something that I saw.
Mike, just before you answer, in fact, as Mike, you were a judge, and obviously Amelia, you're a judge, and I was a judge. We have a question here again from Vladimir. There are some more from other people as well, but what does the negotiation judge look at to evaluate a negotiation? Which, no, honestly, we had a long conversation about this, didn't we, beforehand, without the participants being there, because the reality is that we all see things differently. We all value different aspects differently as well. And I think in all, certainly in all of the negotiation competitions that I've been involved with, it's a really tricky task to get a level playing field in what the judges are looking for. And when I'm looking and I'm judging, well, I'm evaluating, and I know there are other things in there, but my specialism, if there is a specialism, my specialism is in the moment. It's literally what people are saying, how they're saying it, why they're saying it, and what they're doing with it once they've said it. So it's all about in the moment. So I am absolutely on active listening mode, you know, and I judge the abilities of the participants and whether they're able to do that at a high level. Now, that's me in the way that I look at it. But Mike, in terms of what you tend to look for as in the qualities of judging and negotiation, do you have something slightly different? Do you have a different take on it?
No, I want to, I thought it was fantastic how objective BRUNCO tried to make this. There's 5 categories and multiple questions and a scoring system. It was almost too much, dare I say. I found myself scoring, oh, what did I miss, while I was putting down a score, and then I'd go back to a score because something else happened. So I think I need to get better at being an objective judge. I tend to default to, I want to know how the negotiation ends, meaning, is the result more favorable to one side or the other? And I'm going to weight the person who did better, the team that did better, got a better result, a little higher. And that's my cognitive bias. In my career, I got promoted because there were measurables in place that separated me from my peer group at different companies. So I tend to fall back to results matter. Now, there's how we get there. Did you lie, cheat, and steal to produce that result? Well, that's going to be a short-term win, but you're not going to make a career out of lying to the other side. You might trick them one time, but that's not going to happen consistently. You'll eventually get called out. You'll get caught. You'll get fired. So now I have to weight the other side, which is the process. The how did they get there? Are they asking open-ended questions? Are they? We have a concept: grow the pie. Are they going down a path to make the deal bigger? And then are they claiming value? That's the competitive side. There's the collaborative end, makes the pie bigger, makes the deal bigger. And then there's the claiming value end. That's the competitive side. And I'm always trying to balance those two things when I'm judging.
Go on, Amelia.
Yeah, I think that's quite interesting. I think luckily not in this competition, but something I've seen before is people get really amazing results, but through quite bad methods, you know, interrupting the other side, you know, not letting them get their word in. So I think there's a few different things I look at. So I look at how do they treat the other side, you know, relationship building, like I spoke about. A big thing for me as well is adaptability. So if I see that someone's really thrown off by something the other side has said and they're not able to pick themselves back up, adjust what they've already come up with and, you know, well, just adapt to the negotiation, I think that's something I would probably mark a bit down on. But then I do agree again, ultimately, to me, the result is important. If there's a good balance of all these different factors and then they get a brilliant result, obviously they would be the best negotiators. Go on.
Can I wrap back around to what you just said? So here's part of the rubric that's out there. No, in a different competition that I scored, they didn't give us a rubric. They just gave us results. And to use my 1 million, 2 million results, the one mistake one side made was they started at 1.5. They started right in the middle because that, I'm assuming here, they thought that was reasonable and fair. And then they tried to hold on and did a good job persuading, but they moved more toward the other side. They didn't give us a rubric. So at the end, we said, well, there was 2 judges on that one. This side won because they got a better deal, even though the other side, technically, if I didn't have that scale, they did a better job negotiating. They just didn't start favorably enough. To use negotiation slang, they didn't anchor favorably enough. They came in reasonable and then they lost ground.
Yeah.
Now, I want to ask, so Fatima, you participated in the negotiations. Have you ever judged a negotiation?
No, I've never judged a negotiation. I have seen the judging rubric for both the competitions we've been in. So I feel like going into the competitions, we already have an idea of what we're going to be scored on, and we try to focus on that. But I've never judged, and I don't think my colleague has either.
No, Zara, you haven't?
No, not yet. As Fatima said, that we do understand the rubric. Obviously, that is something that we need to get used to because it differs by competition. Like the BRUNCO competition rubric was completely different to UCL's. But haven't judged, but we sort of understand what we're being judged upon, if that makes sense, just based on our success in different rounds. In UCL, for instance, we were given the points that we got per round, so we could sort of tell where we lacked and sort of where we did well.
I'm thinking of having my own negotiation club competition, but the curious thing is, it won't be for the negotiators. It'll be for the judges. Because what I've discovered in the last 5 years, and I've been in procurement for 30 years, but the last 5 years I've been training, and I've been training by practicing. I've learned more in the last 3 years than I've learned in 30 years, and that's by watching people negotiate. And I would absolutely recommend that taking a step back, watching as many people negotiate as possible, and then you'll start to recognize certain patterns. So you're going to be lawyers. Now, if you get the chance, and this is for anybody who's listening as well, absolutely. If you get a chance to go into a firm, all right, ask to go in and just sit and watch in a negotiation. Okay, just sit and watch, all right, because you've got nothing to lose from being in there, but you focus really on the way that the interactions actually occur, what people say, how they respond. Now, the reality is you won't know what the other party could or couldn't agree to, but if you do enough of it, you will actually start to notice what works and what doesn't work. And if you get that and you bring that into your own negotiations, I can tell you now that will give you a heads up. Absolutely give you a heads up as well.
Hey, Phil, can I give you a shout out? Because I've taken your class, and I've learned in your class, and I've observed. I think it's a fun experience while you're learning. But we've got a question on that topic. Is it Neha? How should beginners approach negotiation to develop those skills? I strongly recommend your course. You would never brag about it, but I think your course is fantastic. The taster is the first step in that process. But I've done it myself now twice, and I've recommended it to other people. So I think you got a really great thing there. There is a saying that I've heard in the past 2 weeks a lot. You can't learn to swim by reading a book. Don't hear something I'm not saying. We should read books. We should be educated. But that's kind of taking it in, and you're thoughtful, and you think, well, I could use that, or I could do that. But to actually do in a safe learning environment where you're not risking your own deal, where you're not risking your commission structure or your bonuses, to get into negotiating competitions, to get into practice sessions, to take training, I think people benefit from that. It's the one skill that you can see the return on investment, returning that investment on yourself, whether your company pays for you to be there or whether you pay to be there. My expectation is everybody who takes my class puts $1,000 in their pocket, and like the first negotiation they do. Like if I'm not doing that, then I'm not doing my job well. So I know some of these classes cost some money, but invest in yourself and you'll do better. I hope that answered the question.
Yeah, in fact, there was a question here. So, Nico, I'm going to ask you. I mean, how should because in a way you're a beginner as well, but how are you approaching, developing these skills?
I mean, I couldn't agree more with Mike. It's about getting in the water and putting that fear aside and investing in yourself. And yeah, you're going to see the returns. And that's what we did with our team internally at Durham. So we had an advanced negotiation team. We called them advanced to give them a boost in morale, but they were all beginners at the start. And really what it was is going week after week, doing these simulations and losing that cubby wobbles, to use Moshe Cohen's term, of not being able to do what you want to do. Once you realize that the worst that could happen is you stutter or you say something incorrectly and then you correct yourself, then the world is yours.
Yeah, I mean, I got Moshe's.
Collywobbles?
I got the Collywobbles book here, so shout out, okay? And in fact, just coming back to this question of how should people actually, approach beginning, learning. Just a very quick story, about 10 or 15 years ago, I went to a public speaking club, this is where I went to practice every fortnight for an hour and a half after work with people who are not professionals. I ended up staying there for 4 years, literally just practicing. And I couldn't understand why we weren't doing this for negotiation skills as well. And it really comes back to the fact that we're not trying to practice everything and make it complex. What we want to do is just practice the simple stuff. You know, Fatima, you talked about the active listening, and Amelia, you've talked about the active listening. You don't have to do everything in a negotiation to practice that. You know, just start simply by asking a question, but listening as intently as possible to the response, and then just respond to the response. The more you do that, the more you'll build up your listening skills. Once you get to that level where you're almost not thinking about it, you then go to the next level, which is to think about, well, why am I hearing that now? You know, what else is going on? And it's always what I call the why behind the what. We know what we're hearing, right? We need to understand why we are hearing it. And it starts off simple. It really does. So anybody who wants to get into negotiations, it's not about going on expensive courses. Absolutely. It's about just being a little bit more mindful to what's happening around us. And that's what I look for when I'm judging in a competition. I'm not looking for the big, clever stuff, the big strategies. I'm looking to see who has actually listened. You know, I in some of the competitions I watch, you have one party, they make a proposal. The other party hasn't heard it because they're thinking about what they want to say next. All right. So that's a demonstration of not actively listening. All right. But it's also on the part of the people who are giving the proposal. Because when you make a proposal in negotiation, you need to make sure the other person is ready to hear it. Because if they're not ready to hear it, don't give it. All right? Because it's a really important moment. So there's all these little things that you can do differently. I just want to just a couple more questions, I suppose. So to our winners, so to speak, in hindsight, now that you've done a couple of competitions, is there anything that you would give as advice as to what perhaps you would have done differently going into it in the future? Fatima?
So in terms of what we would have done differently, I think just again with our alternative proposals, something we really try to do throughout the competition is just show how, okay, whilst our proposal is good for us, how does it also benefit the opposing team? And by doing that, having those justifications, I think I personally could definitely improve on that. It would just make it seem like it's a win-win for both of us, even though if you actually think about it, it's better for us. It's kind of like an illusion for the other team that what I'm saying is better for you, actually. So I think this strategy and tactic, I think it would be very beneficial if I could definitely improve on that.
Aside, like just building upon that, I think during this competition specifically, for the first few rounds, there were much easier negotiation formats as opposed to the Harvard formats that then came into play. And I know we did the Harvard format for the first time in the semifinals, the DS30, and it really took us aback because there were just pages and pages of figures, and we sort of got so wrapped up in those that we made the mistake that you were talking about earlier, where we were just focusing on our proposals because we were so overwhelmed by the information rather than really truly listening to what the other side had to hear. And that was a problem within that negotiation that we can actually point out and say that we weren't really very receptive to the other party because we were so focused on making sure that we don't get overwhelmed. So something that we sort of rectified in the finals. The finals was also a harder Harvard format, but just because we had that experience and just because we knew that, okay, we messed up here, this is something that we can work on, we were able to implement that and perform well. That's something I'd say.
Okay, I'm going to give you a bit of advice on that one, okay, which is team negotiations. Okay, so one of the things that I've also noticed is when we have a team negotiation, particularly at this level, it's often a case of, right, okay, you negotiate this bit and I'll negotiate this bit. And then you focus on those bits out, the bits of information you have, and then you try and negotiate it, okay? A team negotiation is about having specific roles. So, for example, Fatima, you could literally get yourself really ingrained into the details. Okay, what am I going to say? How am I going to say it? Propose it, But Zara, you don't need to worry about that because you, as your role, is just to observe how the other party reacts to each one of these. And I think that's one of the other aspects that is lacking, not just here, but lacking across the board, is an understanding of what a team negotiation is. All right. We all have skills. It's like saying, when I used to be a 12-year-old kid, everybody wanted to be a forward in football because we all wanted to score the goals. But if you wanted to win, you had to have different players with different strengths. And again, what I do is when I practice, we're focusing in groups, but sometimes some people don't say a single word, but they're making the notes and they're adding value to the team. So the next time you're negotiating, you've got a lot to negotiate. Break it down. Spokesperson, observation, so to speak. I think
Phil, can I back you up on that?
Yeah.
I think the second most important role in a negotiation is the note taker. I mean, you should have someone from legal should be there, and you're gonna have the end user community represented, and you might have finance, and they're all doing their roles. But as a lead negotiator, you're in the moment so often, and you're speaking and listening, and to capture the subtle gestures of the other side. What I like to tell people is when I'm negotiating in a team environment, I want to have a small team on my side, and I want the other team to be big. I want. It's not a David versus Goliath thing, which is an interesting story in itself. That David actually had the advantage, and I think having a small team has the advantage as long as you have your roles clearly defined. Because when I have a big team who's not very well organized and together, and the lead negotiator is saying, "Mike, no, that'll never happen. There's no way. No one ever gets that." All I need is one person off to the side saying, "Well, that one time." Well, maybe.
I have had nightmares in real negotiations where somebody has said something and I've just put my hand in my head and thought, oh my God. I've also been sat in negotiations where I've kicked the person next to me.
Table. Yeah.
Yeah. I've literally kicked them. Okay.
But the other important thing about the note taker, so I got burned in a negotiation early in my career when I wasn't a competent negotiator at all. I could beat the other side up. I was really good at starting, being aggressive, assertive. And I conceded to the supplier that they could be a preferred supplier. Now, in my brain, that meant I'm going to put you on my preferred supplier list. There will be many of you. I prefer to do business with you on Monday and you on Tuesday and you on Wednesday. And they said, do you mind if we take notes? And in my brain, well, that's administrative. You're the supplier. Of course, you should take the notes. And when the contract came back redlined, they changed it, and it didn't say a preferred supplier. It said the preferred supplier. And that one small word changed the whole narrative of that deal where I'd locked myself into a single source. So I think the note taker is paying attention to what's going on in the room, what the lead negotiator can't, and they're also summarizing favorably to their side. I'm not telling anybody to lie, cheat, or steal, but to make sure you pick the right words that are favorable to your side. That's your job, and the other side's job is to defend and say, no, that's not what we agreed to. There's a different word, and this is where lawyers are really good, especially experienced lawyers, at choosing the right phrase or words to go into an agreement that 3 years later people will be held accountable to.
Yeah. Just picking up on what you two said about the different roles, I had the opportunity last August to go to India to do a negotiation competition there with my teammate Emily, and we had to think about how we're going to really differentiate ourselves in this, because obviously it was a huge step up from what we were used to. And what we did was realize that she was a lot better at kind of unpicking the negotiation scenario, picking out all of the proposals, and I was better, like you said, Phil, just in the room on the day. How are we going to frame this? So that is how we split it up. So yeah, she did not all, but she did a heavy amount of the preparation part while I sat there. Okay, this is how we're going to frame this. This is what language we're going to use. And I think that helped us a lot. So it's interesting to see that that's something you've both seen in practice as well.
Yeah, and the more you practice, the more you recognize it. Now, I'm afraid I am going to draw it to an end because our 30 minutes is running to 50 minutes, which is, and I can tell you now, I suspect that we could keep on talking about different aspects of it as well. I'm just going to hand over Nico. Obviously, this is the first BRUNCO, but I'm hoping that there will be more in the future. I'm going to put a link up for people if they want to get interested. But have you got any parting words for anybody who would like to consider either being part of BRUNCO as a competition, or would like, as in they might want to set up their own?
Yeah, no, absolutely. I say do it. I say BRUNCO is a great opportunity, not only because you'll be exposed to all these different universities and participants, but also talking about accessibility, it's free. So if you're a university student and you don't have a society in your university, set it up yourself or reach out to us. Phil's going to put up our email as well, or there's our Instagram, and then you can contact us and we will welcome you all. So absolutely, next year it's going to be bigger and better.
And can I speak to something as a former hiring manager? Because I know you're all trying to get jobs, and it's a tough environment out there. Having accolades that separate you. You know, a lot of people take a class, they go to a university. That's great. But to say, here's what I did extra at the university. I competed in a competition. I won a competition. Those are the things that get your resume, your CV into the let's call this person pile versus the let's wait on this person pile. So we should brag on ourselves. The CV is the place to do that, to have accomplishments and to say, I have accomplished something, so that the hiring managers start to, separate you and pick the best of the pack.
Yeah. And it's definitely for us, you and Mike, to try and make sure this next generation get that as well. I think we need to be spreading that more off. Right, so I'm gonna wrap it up here a little bit. Okay, so for those of you who have who've watched all the way through to the end, or maybe just jumped in at this point as well. Okay, I want to say congratulations to the winners, Zara and Fatima. I know there were some other winners as well, but super well done. I mean, this is it's great to be able to do that. Amelia, I know that you've been doing a bit of coaching and you're obviously involved in negotiations as well. Definitely, great accolade there. And Nico, obviously, your inspiration to create this, seeing a need and trying it, perhaps there's a longer term opportunity here as well. So you might be in your final year as a law student. I suspect you might be coming back to continue on with this endeavor as well. And we'll be happy to help. I know that Mike, thank you for being a judge in that one. I know you'll be judges in other ones. But I suspect that Mike and myself and several other judges need to get our heads together just to make sure that we've all got the same commonality in our approach. I think that's what we can do over the next 5 or 6 months, getting ready for next year's sort of
and what a 1 is and a 5 is and a 3 is. I scored a little high. But on a relative basis, it was consistent, but maybe not consistent with my European counterparts.
Yeah, we need to have some conversations around what everybody sees at the end of the day. But you know what? As a first endeavor, I think it's fantastic, and it's certainly I think 148 participants, 10 universities, first crack at the whip. I can see this becoming the British universities negotiation competition, and if we can do that for you and help you, brilliant. So if anybody else wants to support, then click in, support, connect up with these wonderful individuals, and if you're a law firm out there, you definitely want to be looking out for them. So in that, we might well want to say goodbye. So that's for everybody here. Keep on practicing and get in those competitions. So see you all. Okay, bye-bye.
It's been a pleasure, everyone. Hey, Phil, thanks for hosting and putting this all together.
Yeah. Thank you,
right.
Phil.
Don't go anywhere yet, okay?
Okay.
Okay.